Okay. Welcome to All Things Cancer. I'm Stephanie Zimmerman. I'm honored today to be here with Rick Boulay. Rick is a gynecologic oncologist out of Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, for those of you who don't know, and how you could not know is beyond me because Pennsylvania is the place to be. I do have to mention that he went to medical school at the University of Pittsburgh. Go Panthers. But he did his fellowship at Penn State. So go Nittany Lions. So anyway, that being said, you guys are in for a treat today. Rick has such insights, so many things that he has gleaned, not only through his professional life, but in his personal lived experience. And his compassion, oh my goodness, you guys, his heart of compassion, his heart of grace, his heart of hope, peace, love, his recognition that cancer is a journey, that survivorship really at this point demands a whole new set of terms, a whole new overall atmosphere, and a whole new language. He has just done such a beautiful job at communicating. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here, Rick.
I am too, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate that beautiful, beautiful introduction. I hope you can live up to it.
I have no doubt, no doubt. So I would love to start with when you were 4 years old and you received your first guitar and your first keyboard from a woman that you so clearly, deeply, deeply loved and continue to love, your grandmama.
Yes, right. My grandmama she was my pride and joy. So, and we all have them, I was really, it was really a blessing to have family close. Now after we train and things like that, families get split up, but my grandmother lived a few blocks away from me, and I used to, and my parents were both working when I was a kid, so I used to get an imaginary head cold or stomach ache or something, and grandmama would pick me up from school, and then we'd have an afternoon together, and it was great. And when we shared a love of music, she bought me my first guitar, she bought me my first keyboards. We used to sing together in church mostly. And midnight mass was a really cool memory for Christmas Eve. That was really fun. And when she got a cancer, I was in my teens. She was the first person I knew closely that got ill like that. And this was in I believe the late 70s, early 80s, and you couldn't talk about it. You couldn't talk about her disease. You couldn't talk about her suffering. We talked around everything. So as a kid, when you're further removed, through my teens, I really had limited understanding of her disease and expectations, but a tremendous understanding of her suffering. And I was doing my junior year abroad in England when she did pass away, and but before that, we used to correspond. She grew up speaking French. She was a primary French speaker, so I would try to write in French my letters to her, and then I'd get them back. And she was a teacher too, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
back, they were completely corrected. There was more red ink on that than I ever put in. And when she did pass away, it was I still feel that loss. She's someone who everyone loved. We all know people like that just everyone turns to in their difficult times, in their joyful times. She was a wonderful, joyful, lovely lady, and she gave the best hugs ever. I'll miss her forever.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have visions in my mind of midnight mass on Christmas Eve with the candles lit, and that just has to be a memory that just comes back not only in your mind's eye, but the total feel of what that was like. I mean, you can probably sense the feeling, the touch, of the sense of that.
I can smell her perfume.
Tremendous memories. Well, I wanted, obviously have listened to your TED Talk, and your TED Talk is full of stories from your clinical experience. And one of the things that I've noticed from the reading that I've done of your writings and from listening to many of your songs, to watching your documentary, which we will get to in a little bit here, your lived experience very much has informed your clinical practice. And then I would also say that the reverse is true. Your clinical practice has informed many of the things in your lived experience since that time when you were a junior and your grandmother passed away. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, that's absolutely true. The interesting part was when um, you decide what you want to do. I never expected to go into cancer treatment. It was just a true calling. It drew me to it. It was kind of like a sun with a big gravitational pull that kept drawing me to it. And then when I began to practice, I found that the same silence, the same suspicion, the same fears, nothing had changed. It was 20 years, and all of these same experiences were there. And I was kind of shocked. I thought we had started to grow beyond that. But when you're off training to do what you do, and you come back a bunch of years later, you almost go into a time warp. Mm-hmm. And your experiences and your language and your learning medicine starts with a whole new language. So you learn all that, and you understand the studies, and you understand the book learning. And then you go back and you bring it to the clinical arena, and you realize that these same conspiracies of silence are still there, and it was really challenging. And you'd find a couple of people who were willing to start to talk, and by now this was probably maybe about 2000 or so. And you begin to hear a few advocates that had been around the block a few times and were willing to confront everybody's feet into people's faces.
Hey, Rick, you've frozen a little bit. Hang on. Okay, so sorry, technical difficulty there. So you were talking about how when you are away studying, learning this new language, lots of book knowledge, bringing it back into real life, so to speak.
Yeah, and then realize that you're away in a time warp, and all of your understanding and your familiarity and your conversations with colleagues and trainees and stuff has completely evolved to an area that we feel very comfortable with. But when you bring it back to the clinical arena and talk about it with patients, they are still incredibly uncomfortable. But you find a few advocates that have been around the block a few times, and they, you've met them. You're probably one of them. They light the fire. They light the fire, and they get you saying that this is what it's about for us. And all you have to do is listen. I walk in a very, very sacred space. The physician and patient relationship is a beautiful, sacred space where things happen very gently and very naturally than they do in many, many other places. We share and converse, and I find that I share and converse things that I wouldn't talk about in other places there, as well as patients. So I began to learn from their experiences and began to translate to other people. And for me, what totally made the difference and what said it all is when my wife was diagnosed with a leukemia. And it was the same leukemia that my uncle had died with when I first entered medical school. At the same age, our kids were 9 and 13. And my full expectation was she had 3 years like he did. And that was it. And I knew how things, I knew how things were going to be. But what I knew was totally wrong with regard to the disease, and trapped in the darkness and lost in the fear. I realized then that I understood the breadth of the cancer experience, but I didn't really get the depth.
Mhm.
until it's right there with you. And I would say it probably took us a couple of years, and I think that's probably a good estimate for people to understand how long it takes for your mind and your body to adapt. And I wasn't even the diagnosee; I was the caregiver. Um, but it's going to take a couple of years to really adapt to what this means for the future, what it means, and then to really not give any hope to ourselves was just that I did all of us a big disservice by projecting what I expected my wife's disease to be. So fast forward, she's 9 years now, still taking one pill a day or a couple of pills a day and doing fine. And we've all the things that I gave away sitting together with our kids' graduation. So right now, our first daughter was a valedictorian. We got a great valedictorian speech. We were together, the whole family was together. Then she graduated college. We were there as well. The second daughter graduated high school. And there's been so many wonderful moments that I just didn't really expect to ever happen. And it was my patients who totally put me back on the right track. And they said, see, there you go. You think you know what's going to happen, but you don't. So leave room for everything. You have to mourn what was. It's life will change and be very different, but that doesn't mean it's bad. And allow yourself to have hope. And that's where I found that hope isn't, a poem, or it's not.
Mhm.
It's not something that lives somewhere. It's really a force that is inside all of us that moves us toward where we want to go. I think of it always as more of an action word, a verb, than a noun.
Mhm.
But it was really through interactions with my patients who really put my life back on track. And as we talked about earlier, they have given such a gift to me that I can't, it's very selfish to keep it all in. So I feel really, like you, feel really compelled to go ahead and share this amazing wisdom that I have that's been bestowed upon me, but also to allow people to speak in ways that they haven't been able to. So, like what you're doing, giving people a voice, giving people a platform to say what needs to be said and to move the survivorship boundaries forward. That's
Right.
such a tremendous gift. So I'm so thrilled at what you do.
Oh, well, thank you. We, excuse me. It was interesting. Dana Farber this afternoon just had holidays and cancer tweet chats for the
Mm-hmm.
young adults in particular, who I think they're just in a funny space.
Yeah.
And funny is not the right word, but I don't know what is. They are at a point in life where they're focused on where they're going. They really don't want to look back, and yet in the moment they're forced to make some changes that feel like they're going backwards. But as you talk about hope, and this idea, hope as a noun, I love the fact that we can totally reconstruct hope as an action verb. And as you think about, because the first story that you told in your TED Talk about the whoopie pie, delightful lady. I wish I had been there that day.
Delightful whoopie pies too.
It would have been nice to indulge in that. I I get amazed that there are people who can be diagnosed with just advanced, absolutely wretched forms of cancer who 10, 15, 16, 20 years later, they're still here with us. And then someone who is diagnosed with what we think we know to be, 95% curable. And then the game changes, and that's totally flip-flopped. And I do believe that it comes from this cultivation of hope within our lives, and a cooperation of that with what we have available to us through Western medicine. But hope is a major phenomenon. It is a force, like you say. Now I want to talk about your music, because I look at you as a physician, as a surgical oncologist, as, you know, well accomplished in your field. I look at you as a family man with a rich and robust family life. And I look at the gifts and talents that you've been gifted with. And you're using all of those. And in particular, I call you my Renaissance doctor, if you want to know. When people mention Rick Boulay, Renaissance comes to my mind. So, Renaissance guy, I want to talk about your music. It is very compelling. I think the most striking thing to me is the moments that you capture. So will you share with us those moments which transcend the diagnoses?
Yeah, so I've just finished our fourth CD, and I think I shared one song with you. It's manufactured. It should be available. It was supposed to be here today, but maybe tomorrow. So it's just literally hot off the press. And this is the first time we've actually written. The other CDs I've recorded have been all music that has moved me in different ways, and kind of reinterpreting previously recorded music in a way that is familiar to cancer survivors and their journey. So it was really an interesting, and it was a lot of work, an interesting journey to really write, to compose, write, conceptualize music that goes along with this video. So we had decided early on that the video needed new music, and the producer, Terry Haddad, who worked with us, strongly suggested we write new music. And I'd worked with a composer before who's a great guy. He's extremely talented, and he's a professor at a college. So he's a teacher, consummate teacher. So he was the perfect one for me to work with, because I've written a lot of prose, and I have a specific writing style, but writing music is very, very different. So what we did was we would conceptualize what we wanted to do, or I'd say, you know, this is what I'm thinking. Here's some songs that I like to do. And then I'd turn it over to Dr. Dan Foster, who's the friend of mine. And then he would write a tune that would go, and then it would come back to me, and I'd say, that is perfect. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. And then I'd put some language on top of it. And so that was our process. Then we went back and recorded it. But so this is like the intricacies of it. So when we wanted to write a song on spirituality, because I think that's a big part of people's journey, whether it's religious or other ways spiritual, I think there's a big spiritual component. And so I wanted to write a song that had to do with prayer. And in fact, I would have loved to have used the prayer, but I couldn't find David Foster anywhere. But that was kind of the idea I had in my mind. Very simple prayer of you know, what I would hope to be granted. But it ended up flip-flopping, and what I said was, so as I was discussing with Dan, who's deeply religious, and I can't believe he went along with this. Mm-hmm. So what I said is, hey Dan, you know when you're in church and you're reciting a prayer and your lips are saying one thing, but your brain is really saying the prayer that your really heart feels. So it's your heart prayer and your voice prayer are two separate things. I said, would you be willing to take Bach Gounod Ave Maria, which is my favorite version of Ave Maria, and write a counter melody to that, so that we can play them together, and all of a sudden what your brain has heard all the time and what your lips say is one thing, but what your heart feels is the other. And what it turned into is the Latin Ave Maria, which is Hail Mary. Mm-hmm. And the English that I wrote that goes with it is actually about losing your faith. Mm-hmm. and being caught in fear, and because I've seen my grandmother had the same issue. I end up dedicating the song to her. Interesting. We should talk about that too. Mm-hmm. So I have these two parts of this same song that it starts with the fear, and then the fear repeats, and the Ave Maria goes right over it. And my 17-year-old then daughter, who's a classical voice major in New York now, sang Ave Maria, and it is just gorgeous. It was everything I wanted it to be. But as you say, it starts with a concept, and then you know, how does that relate? How do you take prayer or spirituality and put it in a concept of cancer survivorship? So that was the concept, and that was how it came out. And I just love it. It's my favorite one.
Wow. Yeah, you know, it's that bringing together of the mind and the spirit. And I think that oftentimes, you know, if you think conscious and subconscious mind, our conscious mind gets in the way of our subconscious and
All
where
the
we
time.
really are, you know?
Yeah, all
And
the
that's
time.
where it's at, getting below and beyond this so that you truly can transform your language. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what you're getting at in that song. Wow. Wow. Now, I think I said earlier, throughout these songs, you adopt the narrative. The lyrics are actually, I mean, they are so spot on as I listened. And did that come, probably a combination, but much of that came through these conversations. I'm sure these are things that your patients have said to you, things that you have felt and said as a caregiver.
Yeah, and they also came about as the experience with the movie, because as we put together the documentary, I was there for all the filming of it. I was barred from being involved in the editing. They
Good
said,
thing.
they said, thank you, we can take it from here. And you know, we doctors tend to be kind of type A control freaks, so I took the big leap and I let them do their job, which is what they do every day. Like I wouldn't have been any help. I just would have been in the way. And then when they came out with it, it was exactly what I envisioned. It was, you know, we discussed conceptually how this would be. But in taking the narratives that came through, there was one of them. So we wanted to write a song of caregiving, and having been a caregiver, it was what I always tell my patients and their husbands in there, and I say, I never sat in the patient seat, but I've sat in the husband seat. And let me just tell you, everything you do is going to be wrong, and that's your job. But that didn't make kind of a nice song. So again, you have to, you kind of have to, you can be true, but you can't be depressing. So there was a couple that had spoken to the caregiving role, and the way they looked at each other and communicated and spoke was just beautiful. So the caregiving one, I said, oh, this is easy. In fact, the producer said, you know, the caregiving song has to be a love song. I said, absolutely, it's a love song. Not only is it a love song, it's a duet. And so we put together a love song duet of what caregiving means. And I tried to give, I tried to give language that, because the caregiving role is really challenging, because you keep so much, everybody keeps so much of it to themselves. So I tried to give the language that they have all told me. I feel like the intermediary. The patient tells me one thing, and then the caregiver catches me outside the room and tells me another. So I know what their hearts are saying, and that's what I tried to give voice to. That you know, and we called the song "You Mean Everything to Me," because they both do. And it's a beautiful song. I absolutely love that one too.
Now, you also have an anthematic song. Talk to us about the anthem.
Yeah, you need anthems in survivorship. There, you need a rally song. So we filmed as part of advocacy. We filmed an event that goes on here in the Lehigh Valley every year. It's an annual event for over 20 years now. It was inspired by a woman with breast cancer, and it's the 5K. It's a 5K breast cancer run, but it's only women can run it. And not only that, the only women can register, but they have 4,000 to 5,000 women every year, right? It's a huge event. So we spoke to the woman who started it in honor of her mom, and said, well, if there's not an advocacy song, I don't know what there is. And I was actually invited last year to sing at the event, it kind of blew you away. It was a beautiful outside day here in Pennsylvania in October. It was just gorgeous. We had drones floating around, filming everything to be part of this. But the message was very clear. You start small, and pretty soon, if you have an important mission, people join, and people feel that intensity and that fight. And then to see everybody come together in a sea of pink, and it was just a beautiful thing. So I was trying to capture that moment, and each verse to me was a little bit different. The first one was about being an advocate for yourself. We end up calling the song "Raise Your Hand" because so many people are just afraid to say, I'm a survivor. Yeah, it's really hard for people to even consider that as part of who they are. But so the first verse was about that, second verse about being an advocate for someone, and the third verse was about being an advocate for the community, the cancer community at large, much like what this event does in raising money for research and so forth. So yeah, these lyrics come right out of everyday life for me. So I think that's why they may feel natural to you, because they come from a natural place. The language, however, and economy of words, that's not my specialty.
Conciseness, my name's not by that in the dictionary either.
So I had to really work at being concise in what I describe. I have to say, do I want to go for emotion here? Do I want to go for feeling? Do I want to go for an odor? Do I want to, because you do all that, do I want to go for just a strong statement? So in one of them, the close to home one, which I've shared with you also, I just described, cinnamon drifting in air. It's just home for me and what home feels like. So capturing those things was a new experience for me. I had a few friends help me. So this ain't all me. I got a lot of help.
Well, I tell you, it's beautiful. Now, with regard to the documentary, how did that all come together? And which came first? The songs of Survivorship or the documentary?
It's been a progression of stuff that I've done. So every year I do concerts at our local symphony hall, and we describe them as a concert, but it's much more of an interactive cancer survivorship event where I do 2 hours worth. The first, probably about every 10-minute segment has one song in it, one interactive, I don't even know how to describe it, audience response monitor. Everyone gets a little clicker, and
I wondered how that worked.
Yeah, so I pose a question to the audience, and everyone has these little clickers, and they answer them, so I get immediate feedback. So, you can tabulate, 120 people voted this way and 80 people voted this way. So, and I have to choose the questions very carefully and make them yes or no answers, so it makes it really separates people.
Yeah.
So we do that, and then the song gives an emotional place for this to land, and then we get the emotion out of the way, and then we can do the cerebral discussion of it. So the PBS producer, Terry Haddad, was at one of those events, and she said, we got to figure out a way to do this for a bigger audience, and a way to do this that's primarily for video. So I don't know that we got there in that concept, but we did something beautiful. But it all came from where those concerts were, and the understanding that this is a two-way street. Survivorship is a two-way street. Doctors don't have all the answers. Patients, caregivers, advocates, researchers don't have all the answers, but together we can pretty much figure it out. So what we did with the documentary, and we adopted some of the same tenets that we do for the concert. First of all, what everybody's voice is unique, everyone's experience is unique, and there's wisdom and value in all of it. So we chose not to make the doctors stand out. We chose to have everyone in a home setting, which is,
Hang on a second.
we're gonna.
So we're back. We had a pop-in visitor that we were not expecting. So anyway, we are back to Rick talking about the concerts and the format of the concerts that he does.
Yeah, so we took those tenets and we put it in the documentary, and that was that everyone's wisdom and everyone's experience is valuable. And we asked everyone to tell their story. And then we asked them specific questions on specific topics of survivorship, which is exactly what we did in the concerts. And just let everybody talk, not scripted or anything. But the beauty is in the editing. So when they come back and they cut, they would center on words that people would say, and they'd get those repeated, and the way they put it together was just magic. They just did a beautiful job. But it was that, doctors are learning, patients are learning, we're all kind of learning together, and we need to share and learn from each other. And we need to do that in a setting different from a hospital, different from a clinical setting, and take it to an outside place where there's less pressure, and make it much more conversational. And so it was just, I took a week off of work, at least a week. It took a couple. And it was just a kind of magical experience. It was really, really neat.
Yeah, well, I think it's really key to take it out of the sterile environment of the hospital, and that, just the shadow that casts. I can see where, hope can come alive in a much more real way.
Yeah.
And people are less inhibited, more likely to speak what's truly on their heart rather than what's on their mind, and however they think they should say it or not say it. I just think that was a very key component also to introducing a change of language when it comes to survivorship.
And a brilliant director who I guess was also producer, Scott Paul, did all these interviews. I was more of a just make sure we check off all the boxes, and knew the patients and kind of got everybody involved. But his interaction with them was just beautiful. And I think he got people so comfortable that they were very comfortable sharing deeply, deeply poignant, personal, powerful things in a very gentle and lovely way. So it's there are very few tears in this documentary. There's a lot of joy, and whether it's coming out or just under the surface, you just see this like gentle confidence in people as they've discovered who they are in reference to their cancer survivorship. And the way their words are just woven like a beautiful tapestry, I'm just thrilled with it. And I hope people find it as healing as I do. Every time I listen to it, I find a new segment that says, wow, I never heard that before in that way. There's just so much subtlety. It's beautiful.
Tapestry and healing, 2 comments. The tapestry visual that I get is, we often say that we can only see, the backside of the tapestry. We can't see what the finished product, so to speak, is going to ultimately look like. And I think that through this documentary and through your music, it's like a glimpse of what is being accomplished, rather than just all the knots on the other side. And so in that way, it's a perfect analogy. Healing. I have been very intrigued. I've always maintained that medical cure is one thing, but healing and a restoration to wholeness is an entirely different story.
Completely different.
Yes. And, from your perspective, what are the steps that what's the best way to step towards healing in one's life after an experience like this?
I think a lot of alone personal time and a lot of connection with who you are and understanding that where you're going may be different than you originally planned. What I usually tell folks from the very beginning part of their diagnosis, don't make the same mistakes I did. You know, be flexible. Expect the unexpected. When the cancer journey zigs, you're going to have to zag with it. And if you are totally focused on going one direction, you're going to be left in the weeds somewhere along the way. So be flexible and open to whatever changes come. Those changes will be everything. Don't expect you to be the same person on the other side as you were when you began. And that is neither good nor bad. It simply is a change. So expecting, you know, I'm going to be able to do this, or I'm not going to be able to do this, or I'm going to feel this way. Let the journey take you, and let each turn unfold for you, and help define what it will be in the end. And in that way, you kind of remove your preconceived notions. You remove your own kind of, I don't know how to describe it. The way that you expect to go on the journey, and you're pushing one. You remove that power to push perhaps in the wrong way, and you kind of become a little bit more flexible, kind of like, you know, on the surface of the water, kind of floating with it. And for people who are intelligent, and for people who are powerful, well, people who have done well in careers, and who've been motivated to work, this is the hardest thing. It is the hardest thing. And I think for people who have always adapted well, and been very gentle in how they approach life, I think they do a little bit better with that whole part, because that whole expectation part is minimized. So I think that's the first step. Understanding that it's going to be what it's going to be. Now, that is not to say don't educate yourself, or don't involve yourself. You know, they are two different things. You can educate yourself, and you can involve yourself, and make the best decisions for yourself, and choose the best care team, and things are going to work the way they're going to work. So they're two separate things. Being accepting of what comes, but still putting in the work to get your best outcome, can both be done simultaneously.
Right. The intention. Yeah, I've also, another one of my I don't know, things I live by is that healing's intentional. It's not just going to happen.
Right.
You do have to put intentional work into healing. And the first step is, you know, you have to recognize that, you know, carrying a physiological process in your body is it's just a whole lot different than healing your spirit, and what that process, how it fits in to who you now are, and to expect the unexpected, whether it's what you expected or not at all what you expected. So tell me how people can tap in to these evening concerts that you do. Do you just do them in the Lehigh Valley area, or are you on, like, do you have a road show going on that I don't know about?
Well, I have this day job, which
I know it keeps you.
So yeah, my general day in the office and in the operating room is 12 hours. So I would love to do more singing and more. Well, the other thing is, for me, singing was, until very recently, a much more personal expression. I really didn't sing out much. And because of that, I'm, I never consider myself an entertainer. So when I do these concert things, I have to consider myself an educator, because it's the only way I can get myself to do it. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not a natural born performer. And although, and so I don't do it often. I would love to do it more, and work seems to get in the way. And to have, and I never perform anything easy. So maybe I got to just relax on myself and do easy ones every now and then. So I usually do it once a year. And I take a weekend and I do a couple of concerts at one time, and maybe a couple here and there. And I'm always asked to do, we've got a lot of sports teams, so I'm always, every year I'm doing national anthems and whatever that for hockey teams and baseball stuff like that. But for the most part, these real personal things, these concerts are really personal for me too, and they're really challenging, not only in the music, but managing the audience and getting people. And then sometimes you get a big aha moment, me personally, in the middle of all this, and I have to be careful to not be overly receptive that it just throws the whole
thing off.
So yeah, I'm still learning how to do it. I do it less frequently than I like, but yeah, only here. It may change because this is my first big national thing that's going. That PBS will be picking up this documentary nationally. And of course, now the CD's coming out that goes with it. They may follow, and there may be more invitations. And then I'm going to have to figure out what to do, but that'll be a good problem.
That will be a good problem. I totally agree. Now, is your CD going to be available for stocking stuffers this year?
Only if you're stocking in the next week. It is literally not back from the manufacturer.
Okay.
Yet. It hasn't been released, and it's now.
So we'll wrap up the title of it all nicely and say, "Still to come."
Exactly.
Well, you know what? That works in my house.
Me too.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's been so much fun talking with you. And I hope that you will come back and join us again. I'm actually envisioning doing an All Things Cancer with individuals who have been a part of the documentary filmmaking experience. Because my experience as well, a very skilled, very gifted director makes or breaks a documentary, because we all know they're made in the editing room, and it is hours upon hours of editing work. So I would love to invite you back as part of that, and even invite your director to join us as well.
Sure,
but Rick, oh my goodness, thank you. As an individual, simply a human being, as a survivor, as someone who has walked this path, who has been on the receiving end of the caregiving, paradigm. There are no words, and I join you in your effort to change the language of survivorship to what it is, something that is hopeful, and that doesn't, that we don't part with that hope easily, that we hold on to that, and that we visualize the positives and the what can be's, in the hopes that those become the what will be's. So thank you for your time. Thank you I know we talked about it before we came on the air, truly is a ministry. And I cannot imagine that there is not a person on the planet that would not be deeply touched by you as a human being, and also just to encounter you as a physician. I think your heart of compassion is amazing.
Thanks, Stephanie. As I said before, I am merely reflecting what I've been given. It is truly an honor to work with patients and survivors and caregivers every day, and be privileged to walk amongst them and see life anew from them. It's almost like a reawakening, and it's been truly a cathartic and wonderful, loving experience on my part too. So, and thank you for sharing this with your guests. I'm honored to be here with you, and it's congratulations on your survivorship and all the wonderful things that you've done.
Oh, thank you very much, very much. All right, so happy holidays to
Thank
everyone
you.
at home. Merry Christmas. And we will see you in the new year because this is our last recording for the year. So look forward to January. And I'm going to